He is an expert on UFOs, has been tracking the subject for 29 years. He's a nuclear physicist. He's going to be giving a lecture tonight at Immaculata College. Let's welcome Stanton Friedman. Stanton, why... People take all unusual courses in life. You're a nuclear physicist, you're a scientist. What originally got you interested in tracking UFOs? And this has been half a lifetime you've been doing this.
Advanced technology. I was working on nuclear airplanes. And so my first thought about flying saucers, I wasn't a believer, but I got a book just because it saved me shipping costs on a shipment of books, and it intrigued me. Read a whole bunch more books. I was also working on classified programs. I was interested in the cosmic Watergate aspects. Didn't call it that then. But it was the technology thing. I've worked on nuclear rockets, nuclear airplanes, far out stuff.
You felt that you know someone who saw one? Did you see one yourself?
No, reading the book, it was information, it was data, and then it was Air Force information. I was project engineer on a contract out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is where the old Project Blue Book was. Got to know those people. It was Air Force data that convinced me. And I joined some of the UFO groups. Didn't give my first lecture until 9 years after I began studying. A little slow on the public uptake. Found there was enormous public interest, that because I was out in the public, people would tell me things they wouldn't tell anybody else. Found that I was fulfilling a role that I enjoyed, being on the stage, strange for a physicist perhaps, and that my professional colleagues, it was their response, engineering societies and so forth.
Positive or negative?
Oh, positive. I'm not a masochist. In over 500 lectures, and I come on real strong. The title of the lecture tonight's Flying Saucers Are Real, and I mean it.
Now, obviously, not all unidentified flying objects.
That's why the title is Flying Saucers rather than UFOs.
Sure.
All flying saucer UFOs, very few UFOs are flying saucers.
What can you say today that will really convince somebody who thinks, look, as far as I'm concerned, until it lands on the White House lawn, until it lands in front of Independence Hall, and they get out and shake hands with Mayor Good, these things do not exist.
I'm not trying to reach the extremists, the people at both ends of the opinion spectrum. I'm trying to reach the healthy agnostic, the guy who says, I don't know, tell me why you think they're real. That's what I'll do tonight. I'll review 5 large-scale scientific studies that most people have never heard about.
Who financed those studies?
The government. That's the interesting thing. The biggest study ever done was financed by the United States Air Force. It was done by a research institute. They covered 3,200 sightings. 20% couldn't be explained, completely separate from the ones for which there wasn't enough information. They did a quality evaluation. The better the quality, the more likely to be an unknown. And they put out a totally misleading press release. And it was looking at that data, 250 charts, tables, and graphs. And that's what physicists are all about, is looking at data. And looking at the press release and saying, hey, wait a minute, these don't compute. So I've spent a great deal of time in the last 10 years anyway, going to places like the National Archives, Library of Congress, the Truman Library, the Eisenhower Library.
Has the Freedom of Information Act helped you in your quest?
Yes, it's helped. Sometimes it's rather frustrating. I mean, we've gotten over 5,000 pages of stuff from a whole slew of agencies, the FBI, the CIA, and so forth, that they had said they had nothing, and then, oh, look what we found.
All right, well, I'm sitting here, and this is what I find myself wondering. Why? Why
to cover up?
Why you call it a cosmic Watergate? Do you think that, like, if all of a sudden President Reagan came on television and said, we have some information that, in fact, all these years, yes, these unidentified flying objects may be visiting us from some celestial, but you think people are going to run underground?
Well, wait,
would you be afraid? No.
You're talking 1987. Let's go back to 1947 when all the noise began. Before we'd put up a satellite, before there was man in space. The government's primary concerns, according to the documents we've gotten, and I'll show a couple of these in just a second, were how do the darn things work? Imagine if you could duplicate the technology.
Sure.
They knew right off in 1947, a crash occurred outside Roswell, New Mexico, within 2 weeks of the big noise beginning about flying saucers. And a colleague and I have talked to 92 people in conjunction with that one event. We found Air Force generals, FBI agents. The pieces were found, bodies were found. An announcement was made that they had a crash saucer. Within 24 hours, they put in the fix to cover it up.
That's the famous thing. So what your contention is that ever since then, there's been this long web of cover-up about that thing?
Now, you cover up not by telling everybody everything. The important thing, and this is where my background in classified work comes in, is compartmentalization, need to know. Just because you have a clearance doesn't mean you get access to the data. And they put special caveats, they're called top secret ultra, top secret umbra, top secret magic for UFO stuff. And to illustrate the problem, some people think that the Freedom of Information Act is a magic key that unlocks all the door. Let me give you an example. We went after the CIA everybody's favorite target, of course. They released 900 pages of stuff with internal references indicating there were hundreds more documents that they hadn't released. They put out a list of 57 documents originating with other agencies, 18 from the super secret National Security Agency. Naturally, we went after those. They turned us down flat. We appealed. We go to court. They did a search. They find 160 documents. We want them. You can't have them. We asked that the judge be allowed, federal court judge, be allowed to see the documents to decide whether they were hiding behind national security improperly. They refused to give them to the judge. They provide him with a 21-page top secret affidavit for him to see in chambers. Our lawyer doesn't get to see it. He looks at that and he decides in their favor. We go after the 21-pager. We're unsuccessful to federal court of appeals. But
what do you think's on these 21
Well,
pages?
we got it. Here it is. And the only trouble is, and this illustrates the problem, as you start going through it.
We have some of this to show. All right, yeah, go ahead.
As you start going through it, you pretty soon find.
This is looks like my my autobiography here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, this is ridiculous. 80% of this document that we got under Freedom of Information is expurgated. So anybody who says there isn't a cover-up.
What do you think's in there? What's crossed out?
Their justification, all their information about sources and methods and details of sightings at the NSA, which listens in on conversations everywhere.
I still don't understand.
Okay, first you want to figure out how they work. You can't tell your friends without telling your enemies. You set up a secret project to figure out how they work, especially when you got a crash saucer. According to this recently released, leaked to us roll of film, here are prints made from the film, Xerox copies of that. This is 1952, a briefing for General Eisenhower. You notice it says top secret, magic, eyes only. High-class stuff. Everything we found indicates this is legitimate. They were concerned with panic in 52. They were concerned with technology as well. And they didn't know the motivation of the aliens. What do you tell the public? There are these guys coming here. They got technology we don't have. We can't do anything about it. But we thought you might want to know so you can go panic off in the streets.
Well, everyone always says, you know, I want to see some proof. I want to see some proof. It's easy to doctor a photograph. We have a videotape here of...
Yes, there's some visuals. I made a movie, or was heavily involved in a movie. UFOs are real. This is an excerpt from the movie.
Did you work with Steven Spielberg on this?
No. Unfortunately,
right, what do we have here?
This was Hollywood. This is taken over Catalina Island, and it's taken by an official Navy photographer sitting with a $20,000 piece of gear in a helicopter going to film something else. He sees this object in the sky and realizes it's standing still, and then it starts moving. And so we've slowed it down here. It does go in front of the mountain on the left. That gives us a handle on the size of the object because we know the distance to the mountain.
I want to see it go through the mountain, come out the other side.
Now that would be a neat trick.
Yeah.
That would be a neat trick. Anyway, this has been, you can't see any wings, you can't see any tail.
What kind of, if any, I mean, that, you know, you haven't convinced me. Although
my lecture's an hour and a half tonight.
No,
come on out.
No, although I basically believe that there is life.
Most people believe that flying saucers are real, not only that there's life
I basically do. I mean, but that tape didn't convince me. How just because it could be retouched, what evidence do we have, or what kind of compilations do we have from people who have actually claimed to have been abducted?
The abduction phenomenon is getting a lot of attention. There's an expert here in town, Dr. David Jacobs at Temple University, did his PhD thesis, one of 6 that have been done, on UFOs. He's working with about a dozen abductees. Bud Hopkins in New York, working with a team of psychiatrists and psychologists, has worked with 140 abductees, did an interesting thing, had 9 of them tested by a psychologist who didn't know that they had this factor in common, this peculiar experience, who said these are not crazy people. They all give some signs of having been exposed to trauma, which is an interesting thing. And the abduction phenomena is very important because it gives us a little insight as to what these aliens are doing here. And because it's important to the people who are involved. It's not a friendly experience, so to speak.
Do you think these aliens ever, like, want to go to Disney World or anything? I mean, no, I mean, they're here.
Look, all they do,
what do
they
want to do?
listen to television. They get enough humor to last them a
they're
lifetime.
watching now, probably. What is this Betty Hill alien?
Yeah, we
visual.
have a picture, and I don't know whether, there it is. This is the bust done from drawings done by an artist sitting next to Barney Hill, as Barney, under hypnosis, describes the aliens that took him and his wife, Betty, on board a UFO in New Hampshire in 1961. This was used as a model for the masks of the actors who played the aliens in the television movie, The UFO Incident. James Earl Jones played the part of Barney. I was a technical advisor on the film, and this is the earliest case to give us any real insight as to what was happening with abduction cases.
What do the people who are abducted say?
They
say that they've gone
generally
away
what's happened.
Obviously, they come back.
Typically, they're taken on board against their will, out in the boonies, nobody around to interrupt the procedure. They are powerless, which bothers them. You don't like being under somebody else's control. Typically, they're put on what I could only refer to as an examination table. Examine specimens taken of skin, hair, etc. In the ones that Bud has been looking at, he has found a number of people who apparently, women who have had ova extracted and reimplanted, men who've had sperm samples taken. Breeding experiments is all you can say. And they're sort of kind to dumb animals. They're not out to hurt. They're calming people down. You know, it'll be over in a little bit kind of thing.
It's very easy to be calmed down when you're in a spacecraft and these weird people are looking at you taking samples from your skin. Oh, I'll stay very calm in that situation.
They seem to have them under control. What I'm saying is that there's a commonality of description here, and often people don't remember much of the experience other than a missing time experience.
And that is, in fact, although we're joking here, that is, in fact, the very interesting thing, and that is that the people who claim to have been abducted have all given some similar information about the experience. What I'd like to do is I want to take a break because we're going to continue this. How many folks in the audience, just by a show of hands, are skeptical about what they've heard so far on today's program? Don't really believe this. Just raise your hands. So it's not quite half of the audience. I want to go to the non-believers when we come back right after this. Okay? Stanton?
Sure.
We'll be right back. Tell us what this photo is. Let's take a look at this.
This is taken from inside a panel truck by a man who worked for the Highway Department in the state of California. You can just see it over the mirror. And if we zoom in on it, which I think they may be doing, this is one of 3 pictures that he took. And I've got about 100 pages of analysis of these pictures. And it's an object about 30 feet in diameter, and it's round, and it was flying. That doesn't prove it comes from Zeta Reticuli. Here's a move in.
Oh, this is it.
This is the same sequence.
I see. This is videotape.
By moving in, you can see that it isn't a small object real close to the camera, etc.
No, it's Buster Keaton's hat flying through the sky. All right, we have a woman on the line right now. This is Colleen from New Egypt, New Jersey. Hello.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm fine, thanks. I'm a true believer. I had a sighting when I was young, and I wanted to know when Mr. Friedman might be doing something in the South Jersey area.
Well, I'm going to be close. I'm speaking tonight at Immaculata College at 7:30 in the Alumni Hall. Don't have anything scheduled for South Jersey yet, but we can arrange it.
What did you see, Colleen, when you were young?
Well, I was with my family on the way home from a food shopping expedition, and my father stopped the car in the middle of the road, and I looked out the window, and it was very similar to those pictures that were just shown.
How high off the ground was it?
Not very high. Maybe we had an old station wagon. It was probably about 15 feet higher than the car. It wasn't higher than the trees. It was over the car. You could see the lights on the bottom. They were sort of like a recessed lighting effect.
So, and you were with your parents at the time. What did your parents say to you? Were you afraid?
Well, no. It was kind of strange. My dad got out, and I happened to be on the same side of the car. And my mom, I don't think, really got out of the car. My sisters were next to me. And I sort of just rolled down the window and looked up. And at first, like I said, my brain didn't work right because it didn't know what it was.
Was it making a noise at all?
It hummed. It kind of hummed. And then as soon as it was, like we realized it was there, it was gone. It was just like it just dissipated.
Now, thank you for sharing. You were a little girl at the time?
I guess I was around 10, maybe 12.
This must be very common, this kind of story.
Yes. Yeah, close observations from automobiles in particular. Sightings are common. The Gallup poll says maybe 9% of the people believe they've seen one.
Why is it that we never have like senators or governors or...
Oh, but we have.
We have?
Senator Russell, who was a wheel in the Senate for a long time from Georgia, we recently got a top secret document where he describes a sighting that he had while traveling on a train in the Soviet Union and with an Air Force colonel with him, a briefing officer and so forth, and they reported as soon as they came back. Arthur Godfrey's had a sighting, Sammy Davis Jr., various Secretary of the Navy, Dan Kimball had sightings. Sightings occur all over. Now, willingness to talk about them is another matter.
Because you fall in the category of
the laughter curtain is real.
We have a few people here who are skeptics. This is one of them. Hi, what's your name? Stand up, please. And when I asked folks to raise their hands if they were kind of skeptical, you raised yours. Why?
I don't believe in there because I work in a photo lab, and you can make so many tricks with the cameras and everything.
Well, there's no question that all photographic stuff has to be investigated. And many of the pictures that I have and use in my lectures have been thoroughly investigated by experts. But it's not the pictures that make the difference. We're talking worldwide about tens of thousands of sightings. We're talking about over 2,200 physical trace cases from 65 countries, cases where not only is a UFO seen sitting near the ground, but after it leaves, you have the equivalent of a burn circle, a burn ring, a landing gear mark. And after your first several hundred of these, and about 25% involve reports of little creatures associated with the craft, when you can look at the dirt and see how it's changed, when you can look at the vegetation, that's another story. When you get into the abduction cases, we have 5 different abductees, for example, who each described writing, actually drew their best recollection of the writing they saw, not knowing what anybody else had drawn. And we find that in that case, a committee of 6 experts agreed that they were drawing the same thing, even though they'd never seen what the other people had drawn.
One of the things that I found fascinating about, remember the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind? I found fascinating about that was the attempt to communicate that was going on. Now, this must be...
That's overdone, yes.
There's not a lot of...
There seems to be an ability on the part of at least one person, one being on each crew of aliens who can communicate. There's some telepathy involved, apparently, which is not surprising at all. But somebody, as in the Betty and Barney Hill case, who could speak the local language. I mean, they take radio and television, run it through a computer.
I
no
guess
big
you'd
deal.
feel a lot more comfortable if a little green man comes up to you and he's speaking, you know, with a southern accent, you know.
They speak
a lot
French
more.
in France.
You know, I'd say, hey, let's go out, let's go to McDonald's, you know.
Have a date with me.
Also, the radar visual sightings are very important. When you get military, many of the documents we've gotten have dealt with military cases. And when you get a case, for example, on a base where nuclear weapons are stored in New Mexico, you get 3 different groups of security people who each independently report seeing this thing come in from over the mountains, go through all kinds of crazy gyrations, come straight down. These guys can't see it. The building's in the way. A guard comes over and sees it on the ground, a big round disc. He tries to radio for help. He can't get any. Gets out of the car with a gun and starts over, and he sees it go straight up. These guys see it go straight up, and these guys see it go straight up. They report that to the base commander, who interrogates them. And that was a secret document that we got declassified. Cases like that are very impressive.
You know what I'm wondering about? What will it take? And I think this constantly is the question. What will it take until one morning we wake up in the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer and the Daily News say, UFO proof? What's
the document, the Majestic 12 document that we got in the mail is a roll of film. We've been working on that. Some skeptics have attacked it viciously. None of their arguments stand up. We think now we may be in a position to prove that those, I mean, prove in the sense of having an expert who looks at the paper and the typing and says this was typed on the same typewriter as stuff from an office of a scientist, Dr. Vannevar Bush, and it's a long story. But I think that that document has gotten a lot of interest. And when I look at how weak the arguments are against it, I'm very impressed with all we've been able to establish that's true in those documents. So we're waiting, if anybody knows who's listening.
So you think you've got the evidence partially in hand right now?
Yes.
Here's a woman who had her hand up among the skeptics. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, Heather Lopak.
From where, Heather?
Philadelphia.
Any part?
Roxborough.
Roxborough section. Hi.
Hi.
I guess you want to say something now, don't you?
Yes.
Why don't you do it?
If they are out there, where are they from? Where would they be coming from?
The one case, the Betty and Barney Hill case, Betty saw, I'll call it a star map. It was a bunch of points of light connected with lines about 3 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, and she's looking up at it. And there are supposedly trade routes and occasional expeditions. A brilliant woman named Marjorie Fish did something nobody else had done. She built a whole bunch of 3-dimensional models of our local galactic neighborhood. It's described in this document. And out of that work, apparently the base stars in the map, the origin for these particular guys, were a planet around either Zeta 1 or Zeta 2 Reticuli. That's the constellation of Reticulum. You can't see it from here. That's the net. I didn't name it.
You lost me about a minute ago. On
okay,
this.
there are 2 stars.
I thought
there are 2
All of a
stars.
sudden, I was thinking about something else. I realized I had no idea what you're talking about.
There are 2 stars, Zeta 1 and Zeta 2 Reticuli. It's a Greek letter Zeta. That's how astronomers name stars. Don't blame me for that.
I understand.
You got to go down near the equator to see it. Those 2 stars are 37 light years away, which is very close on a galactic scale. The whole galaxy is 80,000 light years across. They're just down the street. There's very special stars, as it happens, which we didn't know beforehand. They're the closest to each other pair of sun-like stars in our entire neighborhood. We're out in the boonies. I don't mean Philadelphia. I mean Earth, solar system.
Right.
These 2 stars are a 20th of a light year apart. They're 100 times closer to each other than our star, the sun, is from the next star over. We can't see the smoke from the next guy's chimney. These guys got next-door neighbors, and they're a couple of billion years older than the sun.
So what's the point? Is that like the airport where they come from?
That seems to be the base of operations for those particular beings, a planet around either Zeta 1 or Zeta 2 Reticuli.
Well, let's get over there and check it out.
We don't know how to do that yet.
There's always that problem, isn't
This
there?
is the cosmic kindergarten here, this planet. You can use that phrase
Stanton,
again.
you're
Okay.
an excellent guest, and I can see why you've been entertaining and informing audiences about this question for many years. It's 7:30 tonight at Immaculata College. Thank you very much for being
Thanks
with
for
us.
having me.